Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Hispanic Heroes Power Hour event. We are so very excited to be welcoming our very, very special guest, our final guest for our Hispanic Heritage Month series, Ms. Sylvia Acevedo, who we will be introducing very, very shortly. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I would love to talk a little bit about ¿Qué es Power Hour? What is Power Hour? Hillsborough County Public Schools has really has an interest in making sure that our parents are supported, that our communities are supported and given some sense of belonging in our district. And the mission of the Parent Academy that we call Power Hour is to provide parents, families, and the community with the necessary tools and skills to support students academically, socially, emotionally, while we build a cornerstone to a healthier and safer community. La misión de la Academia Virtual de Padres de HCPS del Distrito Escolar es proporcionarles a los padres, a las familias y a la comunidad las herramientas y habilidades necesarias para apoyar a los estudiantes académicamente, socialmente y emocionalmente. Muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros este día. Estamos haciendo este programa en una formato bilingüe, pero primariamente va a estar en inglés. We are so happy to have you, Ms. Acevedo. I am going to introduce you and talk a little bit about your amazing, amazing story that I myself as a Mexican-American is fully embracing and inspired by the wonderful story that you've had, the amazing journey that you've had. Sylvia Acevedo is an entrepreneur, an investor, a business leader, a rocket scientist, passionate about building and scaling and leading market transitions. She is the author of Path to the Stars, My Journey from Girl Scout to Rocket Scientist, which really details Sylvia's personal journey from the dirt streets of Las Cruces, New Mexico to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the top executive tiers of Apple, corporations like Apple, Dell, IBM, and other US tech companies. Ms. Acevedo served as the Chief Executive Officer of the Girl Scouts from until 2020 and as Interim Chief Executive Officer as well. She was a board member for many years and one of the most enduring nonprofits in the world. Girl Scouts supports more than 2.5 million girls worldwide and generates more than 800 million annually through its iconic cookie program that we all so very much love. She has also is the chair of the President Obama's White House Initiative for Educational Excellence for Hispanics. And Ms. Acevedo, I have to tell you, we had the amazing Emmanuel Caudillo join us as well as part of our Hispanic Heroes. So we're all connected in some way in our efforts to support education. Also, Ms. Acevedo is a national speaker on education, STEM, cybersecurity, demographic trends, and leadership. And so I just want to give you a really big welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We, in partnership with the Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Council, have been able to become very good friends with Ms. Acevedo and develop a Hispanic Heroes book club that launched specifically so that students had access to her amazing book, Path to the Stars. And we have some classrooms that are going to be joining us today. We have questions from students that have been participating in the Hispanic Heroes Book Club. So I'm just very, very excited to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here, everybody. What a real thrill and an honor. And I really applaud your leadership to make sure that students and your community gets to know about role models that look like them.
Yes, I mean, we have a saying that you can't be what you can't see, right? So we've got to be able to make sure that our kids have access to wonderful role models like yourself who are continuing to give back to the community. And just by telling your story, I think that storytelling has taken a center stage to really creating a connection for students to see themselves in the world that they may or may not be engaged in. So Sylvia, if you don't mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some really great questions. It's a very holistic conversation, and I can't wait to ask you questions that have been proposed by our students who have been participating and reading your book. So one of our first questions to you is, can you tell us about your heritage and what does it mean to you and how has it shaped really your interaction with the world?
Thanks for that question. I'm a very proud Latina of Mexican heritage. And
Oh, we got a little bit of a pause on Ms. Acevedo's end.
you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So, I really credit being Latina, being of Mexican heritage, is giving me that dual thinking that allowed me to be a systems engineer. All my grandparents were from Mexico. My mom was from Mexico. My dad was in El Paso. And if you know geography, that's almost Mexico. It's right on the border with Juarez. And being brought up like that, we would constantly be crossing the border. Not just physically, but some of the cultural aspects on both sides really got my brain thinking and problem solving at a very young age. And I think that when I joined Head Start or was enrolled in Head Start, that was one of my biggest learnings and kind of an awakening. Because when I went to go enroll, they asked my name and I said, Sylvia Acevedo Monje. And I remember the teacher looked and she's like, choose two. I was like, two? That was really hard. I mean, it was like, give up my middle name. I was Sylvia Elia. Or Monje, that meant like getting rid of my mom's side of the family. But they put Sylvia Acevedo. And I remember I went home and I talked to my dad and he said, well, in the United States, it's a different culture. And I thought, what's a culture? And he said, well, it's a different way of doing things. And so from that moment on, it really made me aware of that. And so I kind of always got fascinated with that. And because I was in Head Start, I learned English, and my mother also enrolled me working with a Spanish-speaking missionary at our Baptist church so that I learned English at a young age. And so I became pretty fluent and I became sort of the family translator and ambassador. So that really helped me to solve problems at a very young age. It gave me such a big advantage because it kind of hardwired my brain. And now there's a ton of research about bilingual, bicultural brain development. And I really credit that to helping me solve problems, being an innovator, being a trailblazer. And that literally happened because I was a Latina being raised right on the border, practically on the border, 42 miles away from the border in two cultures.
Yes. Wow. So you've touched on a lot of things that I think our students can really relate to: the biculturalism, the acculturation experience, and what that's like, and identity, right? Identity in terms of being able to connect with one or the other. What are, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. Tell us about your initiatives and how do you believe that's impacting the Hispanic Latinx community?
So I'm very passionate about doing this work. I mean, it's one of the reasons I'm speaking with you, but also I realized I'm in a really unique position. When I was thinking about what was next after being the CEO of the Girl Scouts, that I looked and I saw that in technology, there was less than 1% of any executives that were Latino or Hispanic or Latina at all. Okay, think about that. Less than 1%. That means it's almost not measurable. But yet, decades ago, I became one of those executives. So I decided to go back and become a director, a board, and be on a board of directors of technology companies, because I realized the world is being designed and created around technology. And unless we're there, we're going to be left out. We're going to be left out in how it's designed, how we're thought about. And we need to not just be users of technology, but the creators, the inventors, and the designers. So I set my sights on that goal, and I'm proud to say that last year, there was only 14 in all the United States of Latinas that were added to corporate boards, and I was one of them. And so that's a really important aspect of what I'm really focused on. I'm really thinking about how can we realize and utilize the power that we actually have. We have the power in numbers, we have the power in who we are, the power in our language, and how that can be such a betterment for the United States and also for our community.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing, because you're right. We try to definitely have exposure to STEM opportunities for many of our students. And in fact, that gave kind of birth to one of the Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Council Dell initiatives, which is exposure to STEM. And so it's amazing that you're engaged in that. What inspires you?
Querer es poder, right? You got to believe, and you can do that. So, I've been really fortunate to have been a trailblazer. And when I was young, my role models were from books, Clara Barton, Florence Nightingale, but I didn't see anybody like myself. So for me right now, it's really important to be that role model for so many, and and also to illuminate how many other amazing people are out there like me, Latinos, Latinas, Hispanics. We're there. People just don't know about us. And so making sure that that becomes known. I really want the rising generation to believe in themselves and to believe in their power. I personally never use the word minority to describe myself, especially I live in California, and people say, well, Hispanics are a majority minority. Okay, I'm an engineer. Sometimes people call me Spock, like very logical. So to say you're a majority minority means it would be the same thing as saying something is hot and cold, or something is dry and wet. It's like they're two opposites. And if you're the majority, you are the majority. You're not a minority majority, you are the majority. And words are powerful. So I want us to own our position of who we are. And we're not second to anyone. Now, there are outcomes that we still need to improve, absolutely. But I will not put in my mind that I am second tier. And I think that's so important. So that querer es poder. It's to believe, and what you believe is so important. And so I know for me, what inspires me is, what are the goals? What are the things we want to achieve? And the first person we have to convince is ourselves. And that's why language is so important. And if we think of ourselves as, the biggest group, and so how do we improve the outcomes of the biggest group? That is a very powerful statement, and it reframes how you think about it. So right now, I'm really excited about the opportunities. Yes, I know there are a lot of challenges, and I'm doing a lot of work along that right now. I'm really supporting groups, especially those with the kids who are practically incarcerated. They're in those holding cells on the border, providing STEM education for them in ways that can use. And also doing some work for in Mexico for, again, a lot of kids with COVID, they don't have the opportunity to go to school. And if you don't learn about STEM at a young age, the chance of you having a lot of opportunities in your life for career and professional development are really limited. So I'm very, very inspired to do work in that area.
That's wonderful. Sylvia, we had a lot of kids who participated in our Hispanic Heroes Book Club, and we had a lot of questions that came in regarding the book and regarding your story. And so I'd like to just start, maybe even including some of the conversation and the questions that they have had and that they posed for you. And I love this question from Vanessa Bautista at one of our elementary school, Robinson Elementary. She says, of all your accomplishments, which one are you the most proud of?
Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for that question. So you notice I'm wearing glasses. So one of the accomplishments that I don't even think I wrote about in the book is that I realized in a lot of schools, kids don't have the chance to get glasses. Sometimes they get these things called vouchers, but they're very hard to get. And then sometimes they give you really ugly glasses and you don't want to wear them. And when I was living in Austin, I found out that 1 in 5 kids in what are called Title I schools, so underserved schools, need glasses. And half of them never get glasses. So that means they don't get their vision corrected. So it's really hard to learn how to read, to draw, to write, all these important things. And every time I went to people, they said, oh, there's just too many kids. I mean, too many kids, that to me
Wow.
means we got to solve the problem. So I put together a group and we got a van donated, we got people trained, we got optometrists to donate their time. We got a company called Excelor. They donated all these really fashionable glasses that were relevant. So for younger ages, it was SpongeBob's or Harry Potter kind of glasses. For older kids, it was a different kind of look. So the kids could choose their own glasses so that they would wear them. And one of the most impactful moments I had was when kids would put glasses on for the first time and they'd see themselves and their eyes would light up. And I'll never forget a girl who said, she looked and she goes, I'm beautiful. And it warms my heart because like a year, 2 years later, this girl came up to me and she said, you know, because of you, I could read. I could always struggled with reading and learning. And she said, thank you for that. So, you know, I've been really fortunate. You know, I've met with presidents, gotten presidential awards, president's awards from Mexico, from the US. But when I remember, and what makes me happy is to see all those kids whose lives were transformed by the simple act of wearing glasses.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was one of those kids that got those government glasses too. So I know.
And I bet you
exactly.
didn't want to wear them, Adiseli.
No, I only wore them when I had to wear them, which was if I was sitting in the back of the class. But most of the time, I just said, "Can I sit in the front?"
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Right.
because then I could see from there. Fantastic. So let me go on to another question from our students. This is a question from Carlos Vasquez Sanchez. He's a 5th grader at Reddick Elementary. Actually, I'm sorry, he's a 6th grader at Shields Middle School. And he wants to know, did you ever contact your 4th grade teacher to let her know that you got to attend Stanford University?
So great question, Carlos. I'm so grateful to Mrs. Baldwin. Unfortunately, she had passed away, but I did get in contact with her son, James, to let him know. And he was so happy to hear that story, that, you know, his mother had been so pivotal in really, you know, changing someone's life. So yeah, Mrs. Baldwin was cool.
That's fantastic. We have from the same school, Anayeli Barrios, who's also a 6th grader at Shields Middle School. Did you ever consider any other careers while growing up? And what would you have studied instead?
Yes, I thought about being a doctor and I thought about being a lawyer. And I think why I ultimately decided not to become a doctor was, I didn't like memorizing all the names. You have to memorize a lot, a lot of biological terms, a lot of different things. And I thought, I'm not sure that's for me. And then I thought about being a lawyer and I almost became a lawyer. I have a lot of fire and passion to help those, especially those who are being wronged. But I really had a love of math and science. And that ultimately is why I decided to take the career I did.
That's awesome. I'm loving these questions. We've got questions from, let me see. We've got a question from Sandra, who's a student at Bailey Elementary. And she wants to know, how was it when you met all those important people, especially President Obama?
Okay, so again, get out of this poder. So you have to believe, and you have to believe you are worthy and that you belong there. And so there's a great story about that I told myself I wanted to go to the White House and that I belong.
It's pausing you, Sylvia.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. It took me years to get to the White House, but I had bought this special dress just for that event. Luckily, I could still wear it and still fit into it. And when I got to meet President Obama, one of the things about him is he makes you feel very comfortable. And I called him Barack, not President Obama. It was like, oh no. So I was very honored that, you know, I got to meet him. And a little secret, I got to meet Michelle Obama too, and she's a little taller than him, so she wears flats around him. They're both around 6 feet, but he was very, very kind and really a warm, gracious person, and he made you feel very comfortable.
That's amazing. Wow. So Giovanni from Bailey also asked, and I love this because these are such specific questions from the book. So you'll know that they were doing their due diligence. Giovanni wants to know, where is your tia Angelica now? Where are Laura and Mario? And are they successful as you are?
Okay, so Tia Angelica is still around. I'm very, very close to her. She actually is going to come visit me in a couple of weeks. So that's wonderful. My dear sister Laura unfortunately passed away from breast cancer. So, you know, she's very, 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 very missed. My older brother Mario, he is an artist and a writer. He writes different kinds of books, and he has really amazing art. In fact, some of his artwork even hangs in the Pentagon. So really proud of him.
Oh.
And I have my younger brother Armando, and he is a high-tech welder. So he welds machinery for very high-tech devices. So that makes our Tesla trucks or the our phones. He does that high-end welding. So that's what my brother Armando does.
That's awesome, because those are a lot of different careers that a lot of the students have talked about. So you've got the gamut in just one family, right?
Yes.
We have a question from Jonathan at Robinson Elementary. How long did it take you to write this book, Path to the Stars?
Hi, Jonathan. So any of you would-be writers, normally what people do is they write the book first. What I did is I saw the need and I created an outline of what all the chapters would be. And then I found a company to publish the book. And once they said, okay, we're going to publish your book, then I wrote the book. And writing the book took about 6 months. And then editing, you have to make revisions. So all total, maybe 9 months, I guess the time it takes to make a baby. Wow. About 9 months. And the other thing that I'm very proud of is a company will pay you for your book. It's called an advance. And I said I wanted the book to come out in Spanish at the same time. And they said, no, that's not how we do it. We put the books out in English first. And if they sell well, then we'll translate them. And I said, no, the book is coming out in Spanish. And I said, just take it out of my advance. And they did. So I was very proud that Path to the Stars, Camino a las Estrellas came out in Spanish and English at the same time.
Wow, that's amazing, because I know that many of our students who are English language learners are reading the Spanish version of your book and have 100%. We were able to provide them with that version because it existed. So thank you for that. We have another question from Eyelid from Robinson. Are you still friends with Cynthia and Lynn?
Yes, I am. Lynn lives in Colorado and Cynthia lives in Utah. Cynthia loves to play pickleball. She's but yeah, we're still good friends. And every time I go to Salt Lake, I make sure that I see her.
That's phenomenal. And finally, do you have any children?
I don't. Unfortunately, I tried to have kids and I couldn't. And so I have, it's one of the reasons I think I spend a lot of time in education. Yeah. And I've always had dogs. And my current dog is, her name is Social with an X. And she's a really great dog. I'm surprised you don't hear her barking, but she's a really great dog. So I wasn't able to have kids. I'm a great aunt to all my nieces and nephews. That's
amazing. And so that's most of the questions from our audience, our student audience, and the kids that have been participating in the book club. I want to open up the floor to our audience that's live. If you have questions, if you can please put them in the chat box, and I am happy to moderate and ask Sylvia all of your wonderful questions. So we'll give them just a minute to put in their questions and see what they have for us.
I'm so grateful that you love the book. And while you're getting the questions, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories from the book. So when it first was released, I went all around the country, and I went to St. Louis, and there was a wonderful person that had bought a copy of the book for every student at this school. So I went to that school, and the librarian told me this great story. She said that she has a book circle, and she would have different books that she'd read with kids. And there was this one Latino boy that was never interested. He never talked. It just wasn't anything that could interest him to engage. And so she started reading my book. And then she got to the part where she talked about when I translated. And he suddenly said, I have to do that. It's exhausting. I get tired all the time. And the librarian was like, oh my God, he's like listening. He talks. This is the first time he had talked. And what she realized was she had never had any material that was relatable for him.
Wow.
And that really opened up the librarian's eyes about how important it is to have books that are really relatable to the students. And so then she was able to work with this boy, and he became one of her best students. And that made me feel really good that the book had made a difference in his life.
Well, and she definitely made an effort to be able to connect with him in a way that was meaningful to him. So I love that story. All right, we have some questions coming in. How did you, Alejandro from Alejandri from Morgan Woods is asking, how did you reach NASA? How did you get to NASA?
Okay, that's a really great question. I liked math, and one of the things that is the great thing about being Latino is that you have both cultures, and that you don't realize it, but you're always going between both cultures and figuring out how to make things work. So when I got to middle school, back when I was growing up, girls had to take this thing called home economics, learning sewing and cooking, and I didn't want to. And I told my parents I didn't want to. So they said, okay. And the principal said, you have to. And I said, no, I'd rather take another elective. And so he thought I was going to take, a really easy elective. And I said, no, I want to take algebra 2. And he's like, you want to give up home ec to take up algebra 2? So he said, sure. And so instead I got to take more math electives, and I really got so good at math. And that became sort of a superpower because I really loved math, and I did extra credit problems, and I was always doing math. So I got so good that I had the math capability of working at a NASA or a Jet Propulsion Labs. And so when I graduated from college, they wanted somebody like me that had that kind of systems thinking, meaning you have two cultures, two systems that you're always trying to figure out, and that you have the math skills that can work at a place that can do really complicated things, like figure out how to get something to leave, Earth and hit a target millions of miles away. And so that is how I got to NASA.
Wow. I mean, that's really an amazing story. And we have one student that wrote in the chat, said, I love math too.
Yay.
So that's amazing. We have a question from an educator, Ms. Garcia. What can we do as female educational leaders to inspire, encourage, and motivate young girls we engage on a daily basis? And you're a little paused. I love this. While we get Sylvia back, make sure that you're putting in your questions. We only have a few more minutes of the conversation. So if there's something that you really, really would love to hear and we have time to ask, I'd invite you to put that in the chat.
It froze for me.
Yes, you were frozen, but you are slowly coming on. I can hear your audio, but not your video. Ooh. There we go.
Are we back in?
Yes, you're in.
Okay, sorry, you froze. So you were asking me a question and then you froze. From one of an educators.
Oh yes, from one of the educators, Ms. Garcia says, what can we do as female educational leaders to inspire and encourage and motivate young girls we engage on a daily basis?
Oh, a very great question. So the world needs more girls to really understand and like math and to realize it isn't that hard, but it's important that educators realize girls first have to get interested and then confident and then competent. And so there's not a lot that is out there to get young girls interested in math. So you have to really help them see examples of how, there have been great women leaders who have used math to help other people. Typically, that's kind of the best way to do things. So for example, instead of trying to get girls like, oh, you're getting interested in building a car, let's build a race car. Instead, ask girls, imagine if you're going to create a vehicle to transport an injured animal. What would you think about designing and what would you have to consider? Okay, it's like, whoa, hadn't thought about that. Or looking at a problem to solve, but in a way that helps people. So it's still dealing with the topic, but in a way that is much more interesting to girls. And so I know that when we were Girl Scouts, we got a lot of girls interested in coding because, coding, it goes down to 0 and 1, right? But instead of teaching it in a very computer geeky kind of way, we got beads and we got girls to create a bracelet with coding with, zeros and ones that was their initials. And so we had the alphabet expressed in code 0 and 1, and then the girls used the beads to translate that. And then they would create a bracelet. And immediately the girls would say, I want a longer necklace because I want to put my name. And then they'd want a really long string because they want to put all their friends' names together. So
Wow.
in a very short time, they were coding, but in a way that was interesting to them. The same thing with cybersecurity. People said, how do you teach? We taught in 2019, 180,000 girls cybersecurity. How do you teach them about malware and physical networks? Well, we didn't do it the old way, but we did it the way girls like to interact. So girls get in a circle and you get them a ball of yarn and they pass that ball of yarn to each other as they talk to each other, because it turns out a lot of girls like to talk to each other. And pretty soon that ball of yarn has reached every girl. Well, you can show that if there is a virus on one girl, even if she didn't talk to another girl, because she's connected to that network that they can see, that's how it passes. So they see a physical network, they can see how things are transmitted, even if you're not physically, next to each other or you didn't have a physical interaction, the virus can still pass. So girls go, oh, so now they've learned about cybersecurity in a way that is interesting and relevant to them. So that's important. Find ways that are interesting and relevant to your girls and use examples that they can relate to, because it's important to get interest and then confidence and then competence.
I love
and
that.
a lot
Great ingredient.
a lot of STEM is designed around what boys are interested in. And so when you do that, that's a little tougher because the girls may not be as interested and therefore not as confident. So you've got to really look for examples that make them interested and then competent.
I love that. And speaking of girls, we have some questions about Girl Scouts.
Sure.
And so what's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
Okay, this is a fun answer. So my mother got really involved in Girl Scouts, and one year was the cookie chair, meaning she organized all of that, but we did not have a garage. And when the cookies got delivered, then she was going to have to distribute. We moved, and luckily we lived in the desert, so it doesn't rain very often. We moved our furniture out into the backyard, and we had floor to ceiling boxes of cookies. My mom was so organized, all those cookies were gone in 3 days, but I begged my mother to have this one type of cookie. And we would walk down the hall and you had to turn sideways. But when you got to my bedroom, you took a deep breath and what you smelled was Thin Mints. And to this day, I love the smell of Thin Mints.
That's fantastic. I love Thin Mints too, actually. So Another question about Girl Scouts. How do you get into Girl Scouts, and what, what age do you think that girls should engage in Girl Scouts?
So especially with what's gone on with COVID, Girl Scouts is a great way for you to be connected to other girls. And you can start at age 5, and there's a Girl Scout office in your town. There's a really big one. And reach out to them and say you want to be in Girl Scouts. And for moms, it's a great way to have friendships. I know my mother, her life changed and our lives changed because my troop leaders really helped my mom learn English and then helped her, become a troop leader. And my mom actually ran a troop for my sister at her developmentally disabled school. So it was really great.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so we're getting close to our time here. And so I'm trying to sort through some of the questions because they're all so good. Let's see, this is a good one. Will you, because it got asked several times, I'll ask this question. Are you going to write another book?
Yes, I'm really thinking, yes, I am going to write another book. I'm looking at probably 3 types, one for early childhood, for young kids, and then more of an adult book. And I'm getting so many requests for another middle school book that I'm really looking at how to do that one.
That's fantastic. That's so fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sylvia. I can't even begin to tell you how grateful we are that you accepted our invitation, and how powerful and impactful this presentation and this talk is going to be when we're able to share it in classrooms and teachers can use it. And so I just want to thank you for your contribution to the conversation today. We are definitely obviously closed out of Hispanic Heritage Month, but we celebrate heritage all year. And so thank you so much for being the amazing role model you are for not only girls, for young boys, for our community. And it's been such an amazing inspiration and a pleasure and honor to be able to have this chat with you today. So thank you so much. Everybody is talking about, yes, thank you. We love you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for inspiring girls by example. You have some educators who are saying they started off as they were as a brownie. And so I'll end with this statement. Sylvia Acevedo, thanks for being an inspiration for kids, students, and our Latino community. We're so very proud of you and your efforts. So
Tengo mucho orgullo estar con ustedes. Entonces, muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you guys so much for joining us for the Hispanic Heritage Power Hour. This is our final one for the season. And we are so grateful and thankful to all the speakers that we've had that have joined us and that have been able to share their story, because the power of a story and the power of a life journey is so critical for all of our youth. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, Sylvia. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful day, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy California.
Stop recording.